Hello again, brilliant minds. You're tuned into the rulebook room, where the law loses its stiff collar and you get to listen in with your chai, your curiosity, and maybe a highlight maker somewhere nearby. I'm Harp, your legal storyteller, and today we are diving into a matrimonial case that asks a delicate question. What does it really mean to desert someone? The year is 1956, the place Bombay, the case Bipinchandra Jaisinghbhai Shah versus Prabhavati, the question, if your spouse leaves the marital home but wants to return and you say no, who deserted home? It's a case laid with love, distance, silence, regret, and law's measured wisdom and reading between all of that. Let's begin at the beginning. Bipin and Prabhavati got married in 1942, the kind of marriage many saw as unremarkably ordinary. They lived in Bombay in a joint family setup. That, of course, meant multiple generations under one roof, multiple dynamics in play. They had a child, a son, whose arrival seemed to affirm the couple's path. For a few years, all signs suggested stability, but as in many relationships, stability doesn't always mean connection. Somewhere along the way, things changed, and not because of a loud argument or an explosive fight, but because of emotional undercurrents. There were murmurs, not in the courtroom but in the home. A family acquaintance, Mahinder Kumar, became a source of subtle discomfort. There was no proven wrongdoing, but something about his closeness with Prabhavati troubled Bipin's father. It was never about scandal, it was about shifts in behavior. Hushed tones, lingering glances, changes in routines. As an observer of family dynamics will tell you, you don't always need proof. Sometimes patterns speak louder. And this pattern started to wear on the household, particularly on Bipin. At some point, Prabhavati left the marital home. But let's pause here, because the how and why of her leaving are central to what comes next. She didn't flee. She didn't storm out. She went to her parents' home in Ahmedabad for a family function with Bipin's knowledge and consent. This wasn't abandonment. It was a social obligation, a temporary trip, and culturally speaking, nothing out of the ordinary. So why did this visit become a legal milestone? Because she didn't return. Weeks passed, then months, the distance grew. But it wasn't a one-sided silence. Prabhavati wrote letters, not angry ones, but hopeful, humble letters. She said she missed her son, that she regretted leaving, that she wanted to come back. There was a letter in particular that stood out, the kind of letter that lingers in a judge's mind. And while the contents were important, what came next mattered more. There was no reply. In every relationship, silence says something. In law, it often says everything. Instead of writing back, instead of opening the door, Bipin closed it. Not with words, but with inaction. Later, when a relative tried to bridge the gap, when someone made an effort to mediate, the response was clipped and chilling. Must not send Prabha. Happy New Year. 5 words, an instruction, and then a seasonal greeting. That sentence went on to become a key moment in this case because it proved that Bipin was not interested in reconciliation. He had emotionally checked out, and more curiously, he wanted the courts to officially recognize the end of the marriage on his terms. He filed for divorce citing desertion by his wife. But the question was, did the facts support that claim? Let's walk into the doctrine gently. At that time, in pre-Hindu Marriage Act law, divorce on the ground of desertion required 4 years of uninterrupted separation, accompanied by 2 essential ingredients. 1. Factum of separation, a clear act of living apart. 2. Animus deserendi, the intention to permanently sever the marital bond. Without both, desertion cannot be said to exist. And this is where Bipin's case began to unravel. Yes, they lived apart, but was it Prabhavati's intention to desert him? Absolutely not. She wrote, she reached out, she asked to return. Her father intervened. She showed humility. She tried. And Bipin? He stayed silent, cold, unmoved. The court understood this as a refusal to reconcile, a passive, calculated decision to freeze her out, and later used that very freeze as the basis for a divorce petition. That's not legal desertion. That's denial of reconciliation. The judges, with precision and restraint, captured the essence of matrimonial desertion. They said desertion is not merely about geography, but about mental attitude. If one party is physically away, but emotionally and mentally seeking return, and the other party blocks that return, then the one preventing reconciliation cannot claim to be deserted. In fact, the court observed that the person doing the shutting out becomes deserter in spirit, if not in motion. It was Bipin's silence, his resistance, his own words, "Must not send Prabha Happy New Year," that turned the tide of the judgment. Why does this case still find its way into our classrooms? Because it shaped how courts understand desertion, not as a logistical question of who left the house, but as a relational question of who left the marriage. This case taught us that intent matters, reconciliation efforts counts, silence can backfire, and desertion is not about geography, but about closure or the refusal to allow return. Even today, under the Hindu Marriage Act, the principle stands. To prove desertion, the petitioner must show both the fact of separation and the intention to desert, and that the intention persisted. If the other partner tried to come back, even once, and was denied, that's the end of the legal road for desertion claim. So, dear listeners, what does this case teach us as students, as lawyers, as observers of relationships? That distance doesn't always mean desertion. That a visit home doesn't always signal withdrawal. That a cold greeting like Happy New Year can reveal the deepest refusal. And that law, when done well, listens not just to facts but to intentions. Bipin versus Prabhavati is not a loud case, but it's a lasting one. Because sometimes all it takes to lose a case is 5 words and a door that never opened. This is the Rulebook Room. I'm Harp. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, stay observant, stay legally fluent, and remember, in both love and law, must not reply can carry far more meaning than it seems.